All right, here we go. We're back again. Another weekly episode Sheep Farm podcast. This is episode 216, not 2006, 216. Format is simple. We try and release a minimum of 4 shows a month. Members get full podcast plus download. Non-members get part 1. All new shows are released on Saturdays. All of them. Every one of them. Podcasts are always available at sheepfarm.co.uk. And we put part 1 on Podomatic. They ship them out to Spotify, Amazon Music, and Audible, and Apple as well. Please subscribe to the website. You get all email notifications for all new shows. And join Chris on Instagram as well.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram. You can follow Seb.
Is that your sales pitch? Yeah.
Well, what else is there to say? Occasionally put a drawing on there. I've started up. There's actually a Facebook Messenger small group of us now, sheep farmers. So if you find me on Facebook Messenger, I can add you to that as well.
Right.
If anyone's interested, it's only about 8 to 10 of us on there.
How many stuff are you going to get on there?
Well, I don't know.
How many other ways of contacting you is there?
Well, that's it actually.
Only pans, as Anti-COVID
says. Yeah. Anyway,
you can join Crab Claws on there.
Yeah.
Only claws. Thanks for everybody orders supplements. Use the promo code, please. Use the promo code. Or unless you're Jeff, you can make your own up and then say it don't work.
Is that what it is? It's one way of doing it.
Yeah. It's weather's changed. It's red hot up here. I'm saying red hot. It's 14 degrees. Wednesday night, we're Baltic.
Yeah, it's been the same, yeah. Global climate warming change for.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen.
No. It's like a coat warmer up here. And yesterday.
16 degrees down here today. Yeah.
Right. It's always warmer down there with you shandy swillers.
2 degrees hot, yeah.
Isn't it weird? I can call you a shandy swiller and I don't even drink beer.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah. Have you seen Bob's new drawing of Bitch Tits Gates?
Yeah, I did. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what, when he was on with us, that's what he was talking about. He was going to start, because I think he did one of Boris as well, didn't he? So he's doing them as if they're like old demons, in an old satanic demons. Really good idea. They look really
Probably
good.
didn't have to try right hard on that one, does it?
Oh, it's got a wealth of material out there, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's too much to. I know, and we talked last week, or a week before, I can't remember now. They all blend into one, but about Bitch Tits Gates doing some sort of documentary on him, saying how nice a guy he is and stuff like that. Released on Netflix.
Fluff piece.
Yeah, fluff piece. Yeah. Is it? Yeah, it's a strange one. I met a cabbie the other day in obviously London, and it was weird. Going to King's Cross, and he was talking to me, and he could, you can tell on journey in that he were into. We started talking about royal family, and he sold us out in Davos. As soon as he mentioned Davos, I realised he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
We were in, and it's the first time I've paid a cabbie and then spent 10 minutes in cab after just talking to him about our stuff. It always makes your day, doesn't it, when you meet a fellow traveller, if you like.
Yeah. That's a Masonic saying, that is fine.
Is it? Oh, bloody hell. We're going to get bollocks for that, innit?
Is it? I think that's how they introduce themselves to each other. I'm just a travelling man, or are you a traveller? So you
not the same travellers that come and
no, not them
nick all metal from your house, lead and stuff like that. Not them ones.
No. I think it is, anyway. I think it's a Masonic terminology.
Well, there you go then. Obviously. Not only am I shill using a bullshit platform, now I'm doing funny hand signals and terminologies.
I'll tell you something before we get going. I totally forgot to tell you about this. This
is the intro, you know that, don't you?
All right, forget it. We'll talk about it in part 2.
Yeah.
I'll write it down now.
Yeah, because otherwise we have been going.
I always do that. I forget that we're doing. I forget what we're doing.
Can you remember last week when I was getting shouted by wife?
Yeah.
She was ringing phone. Now I'm getting shouted by
child.
Child now, because he's just been for his hair cutting.
Right.
Had a few.
Does he want to show you his hair?
Yeah, probably. He just shouted me from upstairs. Yeah. Say hello to Christian.
Hello.
All right, Theo's Dropolis, your hair looks nice.
Yeah.
What a fantastic
Looks better than my hair.
haircut.
You what?
What a fantastic haircut.
Yeah. Looks better than Chris's. Them 3 strands at the top of his head blow around in wind.
At least you've got some that blow around.
At least you've got some that blow around. Yeah. I've got my eyelashes. They blow around like a national winner.
Does he know we're live on YouTube?
Yeah. You what? Sorry.
Does he know we're live on YouTube?
No, he didn't know. He didn't know we're live on. He didn't care if we're live on YouTube.
He did what he did last time when we were in his pajamas.
Yeah. Go on, sorry.
No, I had something to talk about, and I'll leave it till next bit.
All right. Met somebody in the clinic as well, Kelly. She was in the clinic. Apparently, she listens to
a sheep farmer.
Yeah, she came to one of the live shows in Huddersfield as well. You know, Jonathan Alstead's place. Said we were talking to her. She'd been to the clinic a few times. Yeah.
Right.
Her and a mate listen. So I said I'd say hello. The live show in July is going to be on July the 5th, 2025 this year, obviously. It's the sort of spillover. It's not the spillover. It's not a right nice thing to say, is it? I've made 2 wording, sort of odd wordings now, haven't I? It's not a spillover. It's the people that couldn't get into the May show. So we've had to set another one up, basically.
Same as last year.
Yeah, same as last year. Yeah. This is an introduction to the podcast that we would have done 2 weeks ago had John's steam-driven laptop worked.
His clockwork laptop.
Yeah, it's clockwork.
Have you heard me getting all cocky because I've got a new computer?
Oh, yeah, you're technologically arrogant now, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're going all Bill Gates on me.
John and his old laptop.
Yeah. Get a new one, John, you tight git. Tight Yorkshire git. Yeah. So this is an intro. We won't keep yapping for ages because generally these intros have been going on for about 20 minutes.
It's my fault usually, actually.
It's all of us' fault.
I forget what we're doing. I just start talking.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to that live show, if you want to come to the live show in July, the first one's sold out. If you want to come to the second one, email us in. The response we've had from that has nearly sold it out as well. So them tickets will be going live at some point. And people who've emailed in will be getting email first dibs when they go live. So just to make you aware of that, we are looking at doing another one probably around about September, October, aren't we, Chris?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
possibly.
We're looking for somewhere down here.
Yeah, possibly in Cambridge.
Hopefully, yeah,
hopefully. If not, we'll do another up here. It's not a major issue for us, but the venue we have up here is great. It's ideal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's for you because it's just over the road from your house.
Yeah, no, I'm on about the venue itself. But apart from that, the venue itself is ideal. It holds just right number, about 110, 120 people. It's got sound in there. I was up last Saturday, actually, because I've got a new mixing desk checking the sound out. Because when we recorded, there was a slight buzzing noise. I don't want to bore everyone to tears. But so me and Jimmy Woo, my mate, were up there doing... making sure it all worked right, and sound is fantastic now. Very professional.
Well, it makes it better for recording, doesn't it?
And messing about. We had to press about last year, turning stuff off and off, on and off while we were doing it. One last thing before we go. Richard D. Hall he's had his hearing this week regarding how he's going to repay the fine and the costs of the court.
What was it in total for?
It was
600.
No, 250 grand, I think it was.
Fucking hell.
In costs. And Martin Hibbert and his daughter get 40 of that. So the fees go to the lawyer.
It's another cash making machine, isn't it?
Well, it's definitely a cash making machine. But this is a bigger argument now as to whether what Richard's findings were right or not. This is about how people can get screwed over by the state now.
Yeah.
Without the state having to produce any evidence whatsoever.
Yeah.
This has gone way beyond whether Richard's arguments...
whether his theories are true or not.
Or his research or whatever
Yeah.
is true. That's sort of now a side issue, really, because you get sued by somebody who doesn't have to produce any evidence in court. They don't have to produce anything. They can just sue you. They don't have to produce nothing. They can just say, you hurt me.
Yeah. Well,
imagine how much you get from me.
His whole case is corrupt.
I can see it now. The Artifati trial. Yeah,
his case is corrupt as fuck, innit?
Yeah, from the start. I mean,
from day one.
What I would say is that the BBC were behind this.
Trial by
right?
BBC, yeah.
Trial by BBC, trial by newspapers, right? He's guilty because we say he is, so he's guilty. The BBC have often stated, and the judge stated, that they can't show the images or video because it's too upsetting for the families, right? However, the BBC shows people getting dragged out of earthquake buildings, people, even Gaza getting bombed to shit.
Do you remember that? Something to do with immigrations coming over on dinghies? Remember that picture
of that child
on a beach?
And that was several years ago, wasn't it? That?
Yeah, but that were in all front page of all newspapers.
Yeah,
on the news, it was everywhere.
Also,
whether it was real or not,
over the last 2 or 3 months, that plane in South Korea that rammed into that thing, they show it blowing up on the BBC website.
Yeah.
Just the other day when that plane tipped over, they showed that tipping over. Isn't that upsetting for the family?
That's when it's upsetting for me because I don't like flying.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at, the whole thing, when you see that type of thing, everything on the news is upsetting.
Yeah.
Them poor girls that got stabbed in Southport, they show their pictures all the time. Isn't that upsetting for the families? What I'm trying to say is, every story they write is upsetting for the families.
Yeah.
This supersedes whether it's upsetting for the families or not. That doesn't mean say you've got to go out of your way to upset the families. What I'm trying to say is they're reporting news. And likewise, a court has to show evidence. And what Richard said in his evidence, one of the part was, can you show me Martin Hibbert and his daughter walking into the Manchester Arena?
No.
And they won't do it. They won't show the evidence. If there is any evidence, the likelihood is, if there was evidence, I would have thought they would have shown it. But that's the question now, isn't it? Like I say, this is bigger now than whether Richard's evidence that he's put down is right or not. Anyway, it's not irrelevant, but you understand where I'm coming from. It's a bigger story. The fact that a court of law in Britain, not judged by his peers either, right? Will not show the evidence. They will only go by the inquiry, which is not a legal standing inquiry. It's an inquiry. It's not been done in a court of law or anything like that. It's an inquiry. Once they put their stamp and seal on it, that they're saying that is the evidence.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. Even though they didn't see whether he walked into the building either. And it certainly wasn't shown at the inquiry. I think the guy that ran the inquiry, he said he'd seen it. Now, but he was very vague when he said
right.
that. Yeah,
I'm going to trust him, aren't you?
Yeah, well, exactly. But yeah. So anyway, yesterday I got. Yes, I'll take it back a couple of days. Richard sent an email around saying he were having a hearing. It was an online virtual hearing. He wasn't going to court about, I think, whether they're going to basically take his house off him. Right.
Yeah. I got that email as well because I subscribed to it.
I'm sure everybody who's subscribed to Richard got the email. So I think he got hundreds of people saying they wanted to go on the virtual court hearing. The day before, or the same day, the court said they were only going to allow 12 people in.
All right, stopping any support.
Any support at all, yes. I mean, I suppose they could write, well, only 12 people were supporting him then. Anyway, whatever. Yeah. And he put my name down. So I filled you have to fill a document out. I filled the document out with name and address and all that, and email address and yada yada yada. Sent it back to him, and I was obviously they must send you a link. Anyway, I never got the link, so I don't know where the link went. Whether they didn't send that link out or not, so I can't log in.
Causing some tomfoolery, so that I think they didn't say there was some tomfoolery in the early
yes.
stuff. Didn't Ian Davis say that?
But you should see the link that the letter that they said had on this thing like a statement that you won't cause trouble or whatever, or you get fined or contempt of court, you could get arrested and locked up and all this type of stuff. But on a virtual court thing, you
turn the mics off.
Turn the mics off, turn the video off so nobody can see you. So if you're holding placards up and things like that, and only you can view the hearing, that solves all that problem anyway. But what I thought was, as soon as there has to be a threat, doesn't there?
Drama, yeah.
There has to be a threat that says, if you do this, we're going to arrest you.
Yeah.
Like they treat everybody as though you're a criminal to start with, you know. And then, but on the borders, i.e., the immigration, they're allowing people in who are criminals. Do they have to sign a document like that? We'll fill a hotel up with all these criminals, illegals, or whatever you want to call them, but that's all right. But this is, you've got Richard, who's been a British subject all his life, obviously, born in here. He's paid his taxes, and he's getting treated like shit. And you've got someone else can come into the country who can do all sorts of crimes in their own country and is just allowed in by our mate Keir Starmer. And this is the justice system.
It's a democracy. It's not like China.
Not like China. Yeah. It's getting like China.
It is.
But yeah, so not being able to see your evidence in court, which everyone thinks that that's what court is. They actually spent hours arguing why they wouldn't allow evidence in court. Why not just show your evidence? But anyway,
it's corrupt. It's a corrupt system.
So I was pissed off yesterday. I didn't get onto that.
Yeah. Trial by BBC.
I were happy. I'd been happy to. And you know what? This is bigger. Whether you agree with what Richard said or not, right? My thing is, it showed evidence that whatever they said happened didn't happen the way they said it. I think that is a definite now. I think it's unarguable that whatever bomb they said went off didn't happen.
I never believed it at the time. I've never ever believed that story.
No,
too much shenanigans all around it.
Yeah, because things don't happen like that, do they? You don't have to read into 10 things, do you? It's like now that the press secretary or somebody in America has said there were 2 shooters on JFK. Really? You're saying that now? 70 years after, or whatever it is?
I don't personally. I don't actually. I've never believed any of the Muslim terrorist stories. Never. Well, no.
Depends what you mean by don't believe. You're being pretty general there.
No, what I'm saying, I don't think the grassroots version of a terrorist story that we get told. I really don't think one's existed where they've got a little bomb vest on with a little trigger button on it. That, it was virtually invented by Hollywood.
Yeah, it was invented by Hollywood, but I think that type of thing has kamikaze and stuff like that. And
no, I'm on about
England.
I'm on about in England since 2000. I'm on about that in England since 2000.
Well,
I might be wrong. I'm just saying personally, I've never seen anything that's made me think that they were 100% real. I might be wrong though. I don't know.
Yeah. What I would say is that all of these people, whether it's the Southport guy, whether it's the guy at Manchester, whether it's 7-7, every single one of these people, every time, they always said security services knew about them. Every time. Which tells you something, because, and also a lot of the families, like the guy in Manchester, was linked back to MI6 that Richard uncovered. But yeah. Anyway, so I were a bit annoyed I couldn't get on that, but I hope everything went all right for him. I haven't heard what actually happened or anything.
No, sure, send an email out.
Yeah. Maybe it was adjourned or something like that. I don't know. If you watch it, you can watch this on YouTube, actually. If you're watching it on YouTube, the presentation will play that John were talking about as we're talking.
That was really good, that presentation, John. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did as well. And I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. It was a presentation he was going to do the other week when obviously his computer was playing up and his Tinterweb was them 3 gerbils running around that wheel.
And we're going to get him back on to talk about his new book he's done as well, aren't we?
Yes, we are, yeah.
He's written a fact-fiction book.
Yeah, all the links have been the description for everything, really. Whether in fact, you need to put that Instagram link in as well, Chris.
Mine?
You need to send me the Instagram.
Right, I'll send you that today. I don't know how you do that.
All right, we'll shut up and get on. We enjoy this. This is episode 216 with John Hamer. If you join us in part 2, we'll see you there. If not, we'll see you next time. All right, welcome. This is a long-awaited episode. Well, from last week anyway. This is episode 116. And we're finally going to do the great nuclear weapons hoax, or nuke nonsense, as me and Chris were calling it, that we tried to do last week, but we had a lot of technical issues with John's computer. So we're going to do it a slightly different way and use a different software platform. We're going to try and use Zoom. And this is the first time John's done it on this platform like this. So we're all virgins, so to speak. um, I'll be changing the slides as well. So anything could happen. We might end up just using the audio yet. But hopefully you can all see this if you're watching this on YouTube or anywhere else. And if you're listening to it on a podcast, you'll get the gist, I'm sure, by the way we're explaining it. So, all right then, John, welcome. And good to see that you've got, we're on better sort of technological terms.
Yeah, it was a bit of a dog's breakfast last time, wasn't it? But I think that's my computer that's at fault. But yeah, anyway, hi guys.
Hey John, good to see you again.
You too.
I'd like to thank Dave Murphy for, it's not really a standing, is he? But he helped out. He came in and had a good chinwag as well.
Okay.
So it wasn't a total waste, John. So no stress in this. There's enough stress going on without as starting falling out of bed over a computer going gaga.
Indeed. Yes. So right, yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the great nuclear weapons hoax. What? Surely not. You cannot be serious, John. Everybody knows that nuclear weapons exist. Do they? All right. Well, people think that nuclear weapons exist, but I'm going to do my best in the next hour to prove that it's all a big load of nonsense. So if we're all sitting comfortably, then I'll begin, if that's okay. Hello?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just
we're all ears here, John.
Yeah. Well, like I said offline, I'm gonna do this as though because I usually do this obviously stood in front of a live audience.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try and do it exactly the same way because that's just the way it's set up. So
we're all ears and nostrils.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Unlike me, I'm all fingers and thumbs.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So next slide, please. Okay, yeah. So basically, there's a few quotes here. And what this is all about is it's just to demonstrate that history has been falsified for millennia. I mean, not just like, it's not just been like the last few hundred years. It's literally millennia in order to benefit those in power and further their agendas. And I don't mean governments by those in power. I think everybody realizes that. I'm talking about the entities who sit above governments and dictate their policies. Politicians are just puppets dancing to the tune of an unseen band. So I've got a few quotes on this slide. Now, you'll have to forgive me, Don, but is that the whole slide? Because the way it's set up on my computer, it's each line comes up separately. So have we got the whole slide there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so there's like lots of different quotes on this slide.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So I'll match that on my end. Yeah. So where I come from, we believe lots of things that aren't true. We call it history. That, believe it or not, is from the musical Wicked, and it was a line from The Wizard of Oz. And when I went to see that musical, which by the way I thought was great, that line came up, and I thought I've got to use that because it's just so apposite. Famous guy by the name of Henry Ford, the car man, he said history is more or less bunk. And the French philosopher Voltaire said history is a lie commonly agreed upon. And some geezer by the name of John Hamer, who wrote a book in 2012 called The Falsification of History, said almost everything you think you know about history and science is totally wrong. Obviously, it's the science element of that we're going to concentrate on today. So, yeah, a few more cartoons before the main feature, but just bear with me. Next slide, please.
I don't want you to think like me. That's the one we're on there, John.
Really?
Yeah, am I way behind?
No, you're way ahead, I think.
Oh, good.
It needs to go back to slide 3.
Right, okay.
It's a quote by Honor de Balzac.
We're on that one, yeah.
Right. And he's a French author and playwright, and he said there are two world histories. One is official and full of lies, destined to be taught in schools. The other is the secret history, which harbours the true causes and occurrences. Now, I'm sure all you guys out there listening are well aware of all this, but like I said, I'm just going to go through this because this is how I do it. Some people in my audiences are not that aware of what's real and what isn't. So I tend to do all these little slides first before I before I get into the main presentation. So just bear with me on that. Next slide, please. It should say John Hamer is just a conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What is a conspiracy theory? Well, you may have noticed that anything that goes against a prevailing agenda is called a conspiracy theory. And that is as if our controllers, such as they are incapable of conspiring together to further their own aims in any way. But it's become a catch-all term now that implies some kind of lunacy. And it was coined by the CIA in the aftermath of the JFK assassination to criticize, to demonize anybody who criticized the Warren Report. But now, of course, it's used to discredit anybody who exposes any lies of the cabal. So, yeah, next slide, please. I should say, did you know at the top?
Yep.
Yeah, the term, because I'm just basically repeating what I said there. The term conspiracy theorist, it was made popular by the CIA to stop critical thinkers from asking questions about the JFK assassination. And there's a bit of history about it there, which I won't read out. I'm sure everybody's capable of reading that for themselves. Then next slide, please. That's the one that we were on before for some reason. Slide number 7. Yeah, I don't want you to think like me. I just want you to think. And because I say that all the time when I'm doing stand-up presentations. I'm keep interjecting with, look, I don't want you to take my word for this. I want you to do your own research and prove to yourselves, not just listen to what I say. I might be lying to you. It's a great quote from the next slide, please. Great quote from a guy by the name of Bill Cooper, who wrote a fantastic book called Behold the Pale Horse. If nobody's ever read that, if anyone's not read that, I would recommend that you do, because it's an excellent introduction to what is really going on in the world. Now, Bill Cooper was an interesting guy. For those of you who are not aware, he was assassinated by the FBI on his own doorstep. Mainly, well, for several reasons, but the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that he actually predicted 9/11 2 months before it happened. And he said in that quote, "I do not advise you what you should believe or not believe, but I do advise you that we all need to learn as much as we can about everything we can, because one thing I've learned in my life is that most of what we've ever been taught has been a lie. Never a truer word spoken."
I think we can all agree on that one, can't we?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I think that book as well. I mean, I know Chris has got it, I've got it, and I know you'll have it, John. And many people who are listening will have it. It is one of the books to read, that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it was one of the ones that I hate this phrase, but woke me up. It was one of my very early lessons in the realities of the world, basically. So yeah, it's anybody who's not read it, I would recommend it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. But Bill Cooper and Eustace Mullins were my two people I read a lot of.
Absolutely.
Time.
Yeah. Next slide, then, please.
Yeah.
And again, it's just reiterating the same old stuff, but most. It's the truism again. Most people don't really want to hear the truth. They just want constant reassurance that what they believe is the truth. Next slide. A quote from Tesla. Today's scientists, and of course this is more relevant because what we're talking about tonight is science rather than history, but today's scientists substitute maths for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. All very basic stuff.
Yeah. Another one who ended up penniless and knocked off. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a coincidence, though, man.
There's a theme emerging already.
Yeah. I'm just say it's just a coincidence, though. Don't get carried away. Yeah. Next slide, please.
Yep.
Right. So people ask me all the time where I got my how I do my research, where I get it from, and basically I have quite a large book collection. Some of them are very old, and I think it's a truism to say that the older the book, the more likely you are to find the truth. Why would that be, John? I hear you ask. Well, it's because as the agenda gets more concentrated and more focused in, and history gets changed more now than it ever did, the older the book, it's, it does tend to have more truth in it. For example, I've got a book that's 120 years old, and it was written about the gunpowder plot, and it tells the truth about the gunpowder plot, and not the sanitized version that we get today. And it's a very, very, very different story.
That's because it was closer to the truth, obviously, at the time, wasn't it? The history was
well,
still fresh.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. So next slide, please. Yeah, I also find this book very useful. So that's a very good source of information.
Yeah. The Ladybird Book of Murdering, Lying, Thieving Bastards. I'll say it if you don't want to say it, John.
Oh, right. Sorry. I forget some of this is going to be audio, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
So, I forget. I do apologize. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, A-bombs were invented by, I'll have to read it out, won't I? Because people can't see it. No, some people can't. A-bombs were invented by science fiction writer H.G. Wells. The top secret Manhattan Project was a work of fantasy and scaremongering propaganda. The nuclear war hoax was used to siphon money and end World War II. Evidence proves that the US dropped napalm, carpet firebombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nukes don't exist. And I'm going to come into give far more detail on that when we start the presentation properly. But they're a technological impossibility. Compressing uranium metal to double density with a neutron in between to ignite an uncontrolled explosion is fiction, because that's how they tell us that they work.
I think the head name of the project, the Mad Hatter Project. That's what it always reminds me of. That when you say that, the Mad Hatter Project.
Yeah. Good one. I'll use that next time I do a presentation. Yeah. So this next slide just says nuclear weapons do not exist. And the next slide again. It is in fact
hoax.
A 20th century hoax, absolutely. Next slide. So why would they lie to us about nuclear weapons? What a very good question, John. Let's see, shall we? So we're going to look now at the history of nuclear weapons. And next slide, please, Don.
Yep.
Okay, so most of my generation, who, I'm part of the baby boomer generation because I'm an old git. And, I couldn't post it, sorry.
You want a baby though, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we were subject to this ever-present threat. When I was at school in the very late 50s, at primary school, I remember having these nuclear drills where we had to hide under our desks, these flimsy wooden desks that were going to save our lives from these nuclear attacks that were, constantly in the offing. And we had these drills. We had nuclear drills at infant school, when I was a lad. And it was terrifying. All my parents were terrified. The whole of society was absolutely, on edge about the fact that these idiots had their fingers on these so-called nuclear triggers. And, they tried to convince us that civilization was hanging by a thread. Why would they do that? Well, next slide.
That continued into the 80s, John, didn't it? Me and Dom remember that. Not so much ducking and covering under your desk, but it still continued, that fear-mongering of the, could be blown to smithereens at any second.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean, why did they do it? It was fear. It's a weapon that is used to keep populations in line, and they still do it, on a smaller scale with lots and lots of other things, and sometimes on a bigger scale, of course. We had the recent pandemic. We won't go into that, but
we'll try and get this on. We'll try and get this on YouTube.
So I'm going to say, I better delete that line then.
No, I'll be all right.
So it's a technique that they use all the time. It's a successful technique that the few use to control the many, because a fearful population is easy to control.
And it's been going on since bloody Roman time type of thing, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
The fear basis.
Yeah. I mean, fear is an extremely powerful tool and manipulation of the human psyche. And these people are masters of the human psyche. As we know.
We actually talked about recently that there's always a meteorite that's going to be near Earth at some point. Usually double decker. But now they're actually saying one is actually on its way here. Just after we were on about it, they're actually now saying there's one. Was it 2028 or something?
Yeah.
but it'll just miss, or maybe they'll send Bruce Willis up. I don't know.
I heard about one the other day, actually. I don't
That's
know.
what I'm saying, John. That they've actually they bring one out every month or so, but this time they're actually saying this.
Well, it
one...
was on that Matrix video I put together for that live presentation where they had a guy on TV saying he thinks they should send nukes up to knock it off course,
like in the movie Armageddon.
That's right.
Well, they love doing that, don't they? Using movies to tell us what's coming.
Well, it's just another version, like you said, like H.G. Wells invented the nuclear bomb, then it were invented.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like the Terminator invented AI, and now and 2001: Space Odyssey, and now we've got AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So next slide, please. Yeah, it's very noticeable to me anyway that we just lurch from one major disaster to another one, which is liberally interspersed with countless other less significant episodes, false flags. It's just an ongoing diet of bad news, fear. In the 20th century, we had World War One, we had World War Two, but after World War Two, they knew that World War II was coming to an end because it was all planned down to the nth degree. Surely not, John. Yeah, I'm afraid it was. World War II, just about every major war is planned to the nth degree. And they knew that with the end of World War II looming, that they needed a new threat. And what was that new threat? It was the Cold War. And how was the Cold War promulgated? Through the nuclear threat. And then post-Cold War, we had terrorism, and post-terrorism, which, by the way, seems to have died a death now. You may have all noticed we had a pandemic, and so on it goes.
And you could throw in between that global climate warming change bollocks, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah. It's all part of the same thing. Yeah,
and all the other shite that's going on at the moment as well.
Absolutely, so for well over 100 years and probably much longer, they've been practicing this dark art of control over this ever-increasing population.
It seems almost like now they got us like warmed up for all of these things: global climate warming, World War, nukes, pandemics, and now they've got them all in the little sandbox, and they can just use anyone they want at any time. Can't they? Little splatterings of each one. You get a little splattering of terrorism, a bit of a splattering of a bird, whatever.
Bird coughs. Yeah.
Little
splattering of possible nukes through UFOs in there.
Sheep farts destroying environment. Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? How sheep farts can destroy the weather, and yet nukes apparently they've dropped hundreds of them. That's fine.
It's all right. Yeah.
Weird one, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
A couple of catalytic converters fuck all weather up in Iceland, but
yeah. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me that they always manage to put the blame on the increase in population. It's nothing to do with all these major corporations chucking all this pollution out into the air. That's absolutely nothing to do with that.
It can't be them.
And how come they're still flying rockets into so-called space? And how come Formula One racing still exists? Never mentioned that they might be destroying.
Because Lewis Hamilton goes and picks some plastic bottles up off that beach, Chris.
Right.
He's sorted it out, yeah.
And Elon Musk can fire massive phallic space rockets into space because he made the Tesla car.
Yeah.
Just balancing it out, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. It's called carbon credits, Chris.
All right.
Yeah. So next slide, please, guys. Yeah. So I mean the cabal. That's what they do. It's it's their raison d'etre. They're just constantly dreaming up new ways to keep us in fear. As I said before, they master the human psyche. They know exactly which buttons to push, which levers to pull, in order to keep us in a state of abject fear, which lowers our vibrations. Blah blah blah. Makes us easier to control. Yeah, it's as I said before as well. It's one of the ways by which the few are able to successfully control the many. Whether that's the overt threat of nuclear annihilation, Muslim terrorism on our doorsteps, being wiped out in a pandemic, or some deranged gun-wielding mass murderer on the rampage. The governments have just got a ready-made nemesis off the shelf just to ensure that we're all.
Which should we pick up this week? Putin. We'll have him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we'll have Putin.
What it's like. Yeah.
It is like they just wheel one out every. But they know, right? Psychologists have worked out, especially the ones in SAGE, the nudge unit and what have you. They knew that human beings cannot handle more than 3 traumatic events at once.
Right.
And this has
That's
come out of the
interesting.
torture chambers. So they know then that people are more pliable with two or three traumatic events
Right.
going on. Because
Yeah.
and you think of the mini traumatic events that people have got going on in their lives, then what them ripples of the large ones cause in people's family life.
Yes.
Which means then even turning telly over is a traumatic event because they're arguing about what station to watch and what have you. But
absolutely. So I think we've made that point to the point of exhaustion now, haven't we, about fear? But it's a very important one, and I think people, it's important that people do understand that. So next slide, please, guys.
Done.
Right now, immediately after the war, there was a US major called Alexander de Seversky, and he was commissioned by the US Department of Defense to conduct a survey. And that survey was to examine all the different bomb damaged areas throughout the world, the ones that have been affected by, obviously the World War II, and to analyze and report on all the different types of bomb damages that there were, so it could be like blockbusters, just incendiary bombs, every different type of bombing imaginable, and to do a survey to all the bomb damaged areas. It was mainly Germany and Japan because they're the ones that were absolutely obliterated. But that's what he did. He spent 12 months going around the world, and he came up with the report. So it was commissioned by the US Department of Defense. Why? Nobody really knows exactly why, but it was possibly, and this is just my speculation to be fair, but to analyze and determine which bombing strategies were the most effective. I'm guessing that was the result of it. So next slide, please. So I think everybody realizes that. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah. We're
Sorry,
just listening, John.
Just had a little blip then. I don't know what.
We always get blamed for butting in, so we're listening today.
Right. Okay. So I think everybody realizes that the principal alleged evidence for nukes is Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which are the only two times that atom bombs or hydrogen bombs or nuclear weapons of any kind have been used in anger, allegedly. But Alexander de Seversky, he conducted these extensive investigations into the damage in both cities, and what he found at first totally confused him. And then as time went on, it absolutely stunned him. Next slide. He couldn't detect absolutely no difference whatsoever between the damage in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and any other conventionally bombed cities in Japan or Europe. He was prepared for lots of horrific sights, but he found nothing worse than he saw in any other devastated city. All the metal frame buildings were still intact, and I'll come back to all the brick buildings were still intact as well. I'll come back to that point later on, but bear that in mind. That's a very important point. Now, in Hiroshima, the main hospital is less than 1 mile from the alleged epicenter of the blast. But strangely enough, it was virtually still intact. Nobody was killed in the hospital. There was a few injuries, but that was mainly from flying glass, because obviously all the windows were smashed, because the city was obliterated, but not by nuclear attacks. So his conclusion was that the damage to both cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were the results of extensive carpet bombing and not a single nuclear blast.
But that went down well.
I was just going to say, you can imagine how well that went down. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I've moved it on.
Right, I'm going to have to read this out, so I'll have to get my glasses on.
Don't me to read it out.
Go on, then.
Yeah. Do you want to do a bit of an intro into what I'm reading out?
Yeah, this is a quote from Alexander de Seversky.
Right.
It's a long one. It's about 3 or 4 slides, but go on, I'll let you do it.
A special consultant to the Secretary of War, Judge Robert P. Patterson, I spent nearly 8 months intensively studying war destruction in Europe and Asia. I became thoroughly familiar with every variety of damage, from high explosives, incendiaries, artillery shells, dynamite, and combinations of these. In this study, I inspected Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the targets of our atom bomb, examining the ruins, interrogating eyewitnesses, and taking hundreds of pictures. It was my considered opinion, I told correspondents in Tokyo, that the effects of the atom bomb, not of future bombs, but these two, had been wildly exaggerated. If dropped on New York or Chicago, one of these bombs would have done no more damage than a 10-ton blockbuster, and the results of Hiroshima and Nagasaki could have been achieved by about 200 B-29s loaded with incendiaries, except that fewer Japanese would have been killed. I did not underrate atom bombs or dispute their future potential. I merely conveyed my professional findings on the physical results of the two bombs, and they happened to be in startling contrast to the hysterical, imaginative versions spread throughout the world.
It continues on the next slide.
My findings were pounced upon in outraged anger by all sorts of people, in the press, on the air, at public forums, and by scientists who haven't been within 5,000 miles of Hiroshima. But the violence of this reaction cannot alter the facts on the view of in the two Japanese cities. I began my study of Japan by flying over Yokohama, Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe, and dozens of other places. Later, I visited them all on foot. All presented the same pattern. The bombed areas looked pinkish, an effect produced by piles of ashes and rubble mixed with rusted metal. Modern buildings and factories still stood. That many of the buildings were gutted by fire was not apparent from the air. The centre of Yokohama, for instance, seemed almost intact when viewed from an aeroplane. The long industrial belt stretching from Osaka and Kobe had been laid to waste by fire, but the factories and other concrete structures were still standing. On the whole, it was a picture quite different from what I had seen in German cities subjected to demolition bombardment. The difference lay in the fact that Japanese destruction was overwhelmingly incendiary, with comparatively little structural damage to inflammable targets.
The next slide.
Just go on, doesn't it? No, it's all right. I don't mind reading.
Do you want me to do the next two?
No, I'm all right. In Hiroshima, I was prepared for radically different sites. But to my surprise, Hiroshima looked exactly like all the other burnt-out cities in Japan. There was a familiar pink blot about 2 miles in diameter. It was dotted with charred trees and telephone poles. Only one of the city's 20 bridges was down. Hiroshima's clusters of modern buildings in the downtown section stood upright. It was obvious that the blast could not have been so powerful as we have been led to believe. It was an extensive blast rather than intensive. I had heard of buildings instantly consumed by unprecedented heat, yet here I saw the buildings structurally intact, and what is more, topped by undamaged flagpoles, lightning rods, painted railings, air raid precaution signs, and other comparatively fragile objects. At the T-bridge, the aiming point for the atomic bomb, I looked for the bald spot, like my head, where everything presumably had been vaporized in the twinkling of an eye. It wasn't there or anywhere else. I could find no traces of unusual phenomena. What I did see was, in substance, a replica of Yokohama and Osaka, or the Tokyo suburbs, the familiar residue of an area of wood and brick houses raised by uncontrollable fire. Everywhere I saw trunks of charred and leafless trees, burned and unburned chunks of wood. The fire had been intense enough to bend and twist steel girders and to melt glass until it ran like lava, just as in other places in Japanese cities.
Last one now, on the next one.
The concrete buildings nearest to the centre of the explosion, some only a few blocks from the heart of the atomic blast, showed no structural damage. Even cornices, canopies, and delicate exterior decorations were intact. Window glass was shattered, of course, but single panel frames held firm. Only window frames of 2 or more panels were bent and buckled. The blast impact, therefore, could not have been unusual. Then I questioned a great many people who were inside such buildings when the bomb exploded. Their description matched the scores of accounts I had heard from people caught in concrete buildings in areas hit by blockbusters. Hiroshima's 10-story press building, about 3 blocks from the centre of the explosion, was badly gutted by the fire following the explosion, but otherwise unhurt. The people caught in the building did not suffer any unusual effects. Major Alexander P. Derski.
Yeah. So
ex Major Alexander P.
yeah, I don't know what happened to him actually, but he was absolutely vilified, as is their wont,
Yes.
So
isn't it funny that everyone got angry with him because he went over there and told them what they didn't want him to say?
Exactly. Yeah.
It
sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Same
Sounds
like
familiar.
Mike Eden got with arm spears.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The media turned on him as well for telling the truth.
Yeah.
Bastard. What a bastard.
Yeah. So, okay, guys, next slide then, please.
Also, why was he not? Sorry, John. Was it? Do you know the radiation thing? Did they bring that in later? Because why would he?
I'll come on to that, mate.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. Just preempting it. So shut up.
He always jumps the gun.
Sorry, I do always do that, Just for
You like getting to end a joke first, don't you, Chris?
No. Just if I just had a thought and then I just thought I'd say it, but it never occurred to me that it might be later on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right, man. Right.
It's questioning your professionalism, John.
Absolutely, I know. I shall
Keeping
deal
you
with
on
it.
your toes, lad. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So it should be on the next slide now.
Yeah.
Basically, I found that extremely strange, and very, very strange, in fact, and it's absolutely, totally contradictory to what we've been told about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Basically, what Dostoevsky is saying is that the damage to both cities was entirely consistent with extreme firebombing. There was no justification, i.e. turning stone to dust, or melted metal at all, which again is what they tell us would have happened. And the main hospital, just to repeat that, less than a mile from the alleged epicenter of the blast, was still intact. No one was killed, and only a few slight injuries, mainly from flying glass. And the next slide, please, is just a picture of the hospital. Now you can see that the structure is still standing, according to the general way that they portray the atomic blast. It just obliterates buildings, just turns everything to dust instantly within a 5-mile radius or whatever figure they want to conjure out their backsides. So yeah, obviously the hospital is still standing. No one was killed. There you go.
But it's strange if you're looking for pictures of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There aren't many pictures, are there, floating around on video?
No, there aren't. No.
Which is unusual for World War II.
Yes.
There's lots of footage from every, whether in Germany, Russia, Britain in the Blitz or whatever, France. There's loads of Italy. There's loads of images and from all the sides, video.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm guessing all the houses around there were wood then, John.
Again, I'll come on to that point, Mr. Preempt. I'm going to cover that. Don't worry.
I'm just going to shut up.
We're going to get to that. Yeah, we're going to get to that. Don't worry. Right.
He's getting excited.
I need to stop talking about the future.
Okay. So next slide, please, guys.
Yeah, you're on.
Right. This is a quote from an unnamed American POW in Japan, but I'm pretty sure it's a real quote and not just made up. He said, "We aren't really sure what's happened. We're happy about the war ending, but I don't think anyone really believes this thing about the atom bomb. I think it might be some kind of propaganda device that gives the Japanese a good excuse to surrender. Perhaps the Japanese said we dropped an atomic bomb and we're just going along with it. I mean, it's not true that but it just shows you that there was doubts going on at the time that what's this business and rubbish about the atomic bomb. Nobody seemed to believe it.
It's the outlandish lie as well, isn't it? Let's conjure up the massive outlandish lie, and people daren't question it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also points a finger. Sorry if I spoil something here. Also points a finger that all the countries are in cahoots. And
you've just spoiled it again.
Have I really?
No, you're joking. It's a very good point, Chris. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That's what I like it.
It's a very good point. I wish I hadn't thought of that one. No.
Oh dear. Right, next slide, guys, please.
Yeah, we're on.
Right. Which one's this? So what did Mr. Seversky, or Major Seversky, conclude? He said that in reality, the damage was a result of carpet incendiary bombing, as with all the other Japanese cities. Now, this is where I come on to the point that Chris was making about the wooden buildings. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were strangely not attacked at all until the nuclear attacks. They'd been subjected to no, incendiary bombing or anything. every single other Japanese city had been attacked and virtually razed to the ground. But it's as though they were saving Hiroshima and Nagasaki for something. And significantly, both Hiroshima and Nagasaki were singled out, I believe, because both were of 90% plus wooden constructed buildings. So it would give the impression, if a shitload of incendiaries were dropped on it, it will give that impression of an atomic bomb.
Am I right?
So they saved them.
They were dropping napalm on Japan as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Early
so
napalm.
How easy would it have been to make, a devastated wooden city look like a nuclear attack? Yeah. And secret US government documents actually prove it was firebombed and not nuked. That's just speculation from my point of view, because I've got no proof of it, but I've read it somewhere, and it said that that was the case. But you can take that with a pinch of salt if you like. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was true. So yeah, next slide, please. That's just a picture for those of you listening. And it just shows a picture of Hiroshima carpet bombed.
And they look very much like the fires, the American fires, don't they? The forest fires, if you like.
Yeah, they do.
Look very much like that, and like Dresden as well.
Yes,
which
indeed.
is firebombed.
Yeah. Next slide, guys.
Yep.
So interestingly enough, neither Hiroshima nor Nagasaki had any strategic military value whatsoever, and they could easily have served the purpose of eliciting maximum propaganda publicity from a fake nuclear attack. Now, interestingly as well, the death figures in the Hiroshima Bomb Museum are self-admittedly inclusive of anyone who was in the area at that time and died subsequently, regardless of the actual cause. So where have we heard this tactic before quite recently? Yeah, so it works, mate. It works. Yeah. Why not continue to use it? Which is what they do all the time, of course. They have these MOs that they're consistent with. So
100%.
Yeah. And just to repeat, Derski also said that one of these nuclear weapons, if dropped on New York, would have caused insignificant amounts of damage. So yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, it's a fact. This is a short history lesson here for those who are unaware. Japan had been trying to negotiate surrender terms from 1944, but the US refused. Interesting, yeah. This is totally contrary to what we're told. I know this is a fact, actually. I've seen documents that prove this. Because I believe it's because they already had plans to obliterate a couple of cities, which would then facilitate the Cold War, as had been planned well in advance.
You could see them advancing, picking out, say, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, a long time in advance to say this is where we're going to use this story.
Again,
because they were mainly wooden.
Would mean the Japanese would possibly have to be in cahoots.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, mate. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I can't speak to that for sure, but yeah,
you get that suspicion with what we know now.
And, absolutely.
Things especially after the war, Chris, where Japan were based in another state of America for a long time. Weren't
they? And flattened and rebuilt. I mean, they were wooden, like shanty-looking towns, and then rebuilt brand new. I mean, that sounds familiar as well.
Yeah, I look at the technological advances Japan made in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It was just incredible, wasn't it? The way that the country was rebuilt. Mm-hmm. Probably at the behest of American corporations, but who knows really. So yeah, the bomb allegedly was ready by mid-1945. Had they actually announced it too soon, then the war would have ended prematurely, and that was definitely not part of the agenda. The war was definitely slated to go until mid-1945. No question about that. So yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, nuclear weapons technology is allegedly a closely guarded secret, which is very convenient, of course. And they tell us that nuclear weapons work by compressing two solid pieces of metal together, which causes them to explode. Wow, that's interesting. There is no scientific evidence that explosive fission exists, except within highly suspect allegedly secret military documents. And real scientists, I'm talking about, scientists who are not bought and paid for here, they confirm, physicists, that it's absolutely, totally impossible, and it goes against the laws of physics. And in fact, there's currently a $1 million prize available on the internet to anyone who can prove that nuclear weapons exist. And surprise, surprise, it's never been claimed.
Well, Brian Cox has never put his hat in the ring.
No, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, he's missing out on a good opportunity there, isn't he?
Yeah.
And if it's so top secret, how come all these countries have got them all around the world now?
Yeah.
Again, they're all in cahoots, aren't they?
It'd be very easy for a scientist just to say, "Fuck it, I'm going to get £1 million, and here you go."
Yeah. Even incognito, just to claim the £1 million.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give it to charity, maybe. Then you can just line the CEO's pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So cynical, though.
Yeah. Give it to Oxfam so they can buy heroin with it.
Yeah. Very good.
Put it to some good use.
Definitely. Yeah. Don't waste it straight away on poor people or anything like that.
No. Give people heroin instead. Yeah. £1 million worth.
Easy.
Yeah. I'll buy a few vaccines.
Yeah.
I won't mention that word again. Sorry.
Arm spears, John. Arm spears.
Arm spears. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
We're out of practice
next slide,
now, aren't we?
please.
We're out of practice.
Oh yeah. Next slide, please, guys.
There you go.
Right.
Edward Stettinius.
Edward Stettinius Jr., the son of a J.P. Morgan partner, and he was U.S. Secretary of State in early 1945. And he said, "Our entire post-war program depends on terrifying the world with the atomic bomb. We are hoping for a tally of 1 million dead in Japan, but if they surrender, we won't have anything." And that just tells us
of 1 million dead.
Nice, isn't it?
That just tells us all we need to know about the true intentions behind the attacks. Why, our entire post-war program depends on terrifying the world with the atomic bomb.
I wonder what.
I mean, you can't spell it out any more than that, can you?
No. I know there's a lot of trauma and fear, and changing, people's cultural mentality, if you like. But I wonder what the financial figure is from Cold War to now, based on the Cold War, if it happened and didn't happen. I wonder what the difference would have been financially for these people. I mean, you've got a banker there saying this, not a military guy.
Yeah.
The trillions that they'll have made out of Vietnam and all the other, every war that's been fought or been going, like even the last Ukraine nonsense, is always going to end in a nuclear war.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How many died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, John?
They reckon about, I think it was 250,000 in Hiroshima and about 150,000 in Nagasaki. I mean, those figures could be correct, but it wasn't an atomic bomb. It's as simple as that. Well, because I mean, it was more than that in Dresden, wasn't it? And that wasn't an atomic attack; that was just a fireballing attack. Yeah, it was double that in Dresden.
What was it in Cologne?
Oh, several 100,000. And Hamburg the same as well. Yeah. Berlin, they all had it.
But them figures there aren't real figures either, because there were so many people coming into those cities, either passing through to try and escape things. They don't know who was there.
No, well, they reckon Dresden's population had been, because Dresden was in the east, and all the refugees from the east, from the Eastern Europe, were flooding into Dresden, and they reckoned it had doubled the population. Right. But they were mainly refugees. There was Dresden had no military significance whatsoever. It was, it still is. It's a pottery. That's what its main industry was, pottery, Dresden, China, wasn't it? So, there was no military justification for Dresden, just as there was no military justification for Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, but just think if all those Luftwaffe planes were dropping cups and saucers on us.
Yeah, I know it'd be horrendous. The carnage would be horrific, wouldn't it? Yeah, just think of all those cuts on your arms and legs. It'd be horrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah, those pottery guns they could have made.
Yeah, that porcelain can leave nasty damage.
It can, yeah.
Evil
right,
bastards.
next slide.
Even the pottery.
Pottery bastards. How dare they?
Yeah, that we get. So, So it's all fakery. Yeah, and it's easy to prove, and we're going to come on to that in a minute, but it's easy to prove that all the videos and stills of these so-called mushroom clouds are absolutely faked. My co-author, Shannon Rowan, she wrote Welcome to the Masquerade with me. She's a former professional photographer and she's a photographic expert. And she examined dozens of photos and videos of so-called nuclear attacks and tests, and of which there's quite a lot less in existence than you may actually imagine. But she said every single one is fake without question. So we'll look at that in more detail shortly. So next slide, please. Just bear with me while I catch up. So I've got to make about 10 clicks for every slide. Right. Okay. So yeah, odd facts about the initial nuclear weapons tests. The Trinity test was a plutonium bomb, as was the Nagasaki bomb, which Nagasaki was the second city to be attacked, not the first one. That one was called Fat Man. Yet the Hiroshima bomb, that was the first one to be attacked, Little Boy it was called, was a uranium bomb, and therefore it was never tested at all. So why would they use the untested one first, or even at all? It just doesn't make any kind of sense. No, I know it was a rhetorical question, mate.
Yeah, no, but they leaked out, didn't they? You can tell it's a leak as well. That the first one was one they'd invented at the Trinity test site, if you like. The other one, the Little Boy one, was one that stole off the Nazis.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
That's what. Okay. Yeah, they have released that type of story.
Do you know what it says to me though? They're just throwing some confusion in there just to make you that, just that little bit of confusion of asymptomatic.
Yeah. Why would they lie over a bomb?
Yeah, but it is though, and it's just more. More.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that mean? There must be something behind the Little Boy Fat Man thing as well, by the way.
Oh, there has to be.
Yeah.
I don't
know.
Yeah.
I don't even want to think what that might mean.
I don't know.
So I mean,
the Little Boy.
Yeah, it makes no logical sense that they would use the untested one first. Yeah. It just doesn't. I mean, because even if the Nazis had tested it, I don't think they did anyway. No. I think that's all made up anyway. But so none of it makes any sense. The whole thing's nonsense. So in fact, stop me if you've heard this story before. But all the specifications, calculations, diagrams, and science behind Little Boy were immediately destroyed after Hiroshima.
Sounds NASA familiar.
that old chestnut.
Yeah. For those of you not aware of what we're talking about here, that's exactly what happened with Apollo.
So all them billions of dollars and secrecy and people getting executed for spilling beans to Russia and Germany, they lost them.
Yeah.
Did anybody get executed for that, John?
No. There was a man and a woman that were executed for selling the secrets to the Russians, weren't there? I can't remember, but nobody was executed for losing them. No.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Weird that. I went shopping and I put my bag down somewhere. Just couldn't find.
So out of all experiments in the world, the two biggest experiments that humankind apparently have ever done, they just lost all the information.
And most secretive, Chris.
You're the most secretive, biggest, most expensive experiment of all time.
Yeah. Apart from inventing fire.
Someone left them in the back of a taxi when they were pissed.
Maybe we were out with you, Chris.
Yeah.
Left them in the taxi seat.
So the parallels between NASA and the moon landings are very, very obvious there, aren't they?
And it's strange, isn't it? How they used, obviously, NASA used a lot of the ex-Nazis in the
technology,
in the technology. Supposed technology ability.
Still using it now. It's exactly the same.
It's not, Chris. It's now modernised.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
slightly different shape rockets, Chris.
More phallic.
More phallic.
They've now got a bell end on them.
Yeah.
Next slide, please, guys. We're going to look at the photos now. Well, others of us have got the actual videos. We're going to look at the photos. It'd be a bit difficult for those.
You're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this. Otherwise, I'll have edited it out.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough. So, we can talk about them anyway. So this first
it's
one.
a classic mushroom cloud in the sea. That's what that is.
Yeah. Now, that's a typical nuclear test from the 1950s. It could have been Bikini Atoll. I'm not sure about which one it was, but what is wrong with that picture?
It doesn't even look right.
So many things.
Picture.
Hey?
It doesn't look right, does it?
No, it isn't right. I mean, there's so many things with it. It's poor quality fakery, basically. What is the light source? Well, it must be the explosion itself because it's dark. So why do we see a diagonal pattern of light coming from the explosion? Surely it should have lit up the whole picture. This is what Shannon pointed out to me.
Is that an underwater test? Is that an underwater test?
Right. Could have been.
But why is why is the light coming out of water then in smoke?
No, it's not. It's not coming out of the water. It's shining on the water from the actual mushroom head at the top. So yeah, why would it just lit up that little portion of the sea and not the whole picture? Should be illuminated, shouldn't it?
But also, why would, if it's been exploded underwater, why would it be bright like that?
Well, true, yeah. It might not.
Sorry, I've just twigged what you mean, John. It's the light's directing towards the camera.
Yeah, it is.
It should be 360s around the explosion. Is what you mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
No, everybody who knows mushroom clouds knows it only points in one direction.
Like the sun.
Come on, Shannon, get real.
And that semicircular line going around from say 12 o'clock to about 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
It may appear to be the ocean surge. But it's not. That's just the atoll itself, apparently. There is no surge in the sea, which there should be. There should be a circular tidal wave. And the little clouds dotted all around remain totally in situ and do not respond to the blast at all, which is just utter bananas. It's just absolute nonsense.
They look like proper clouds as well.
Yeah.
For
a change, yeah. So that's that one. Then the next one. Now, this is the Trinity nuclear test, this one. Again, more fakery. This allegedly took place at 4:30 a.m., but being the super-duper incredible researcher like what I am, I actually checked the time of the sunrise in New Mexico on that date in 1945, and it was actually 6:30. So, again, lots of things wrong with this. For example, look at the shadows being cast. If the light source was the explosion itself, the shadows would not be at right angles. Not be at right angles. The light source must be off to the right of the picture. So, somebody's lying to us somewhere. It certainly wasn't 4:30 a.m.
All of them look the same, don't they? I know they would be dressed the same, but they all look the same.
And by the way, these nuclear blasts give off gamma rays, deadly gamma rays. Anybody sat so close to them like that wouldn't.
They've got 3D glasses on, though. They're all right.
All right, fair enough. Have they got string vests on as well?
That string vests. Yeah. Don't take piss out of string vests. Chris's favourite.
Yeah. Right, and that allegedly the Trinity test was 20 kilotons. Okay, but to me it looks pretty feeble. And when you see the next picture, you'll see what I mean. Now the following one, which is called Able, was 23 kilotons.
Right.
So significantly more powerful looking than the previous one. Let's go back to the previous one. Go back to the previous one. Look at that, 20 kilotons. And then back to the 23 kilotons.
They've upped the game for that one, haven't they? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
They've upped the mushrooms.
Yeah, but it's only 3 more kilotons, you see. And again, there's no sea surge there at all, nothing. And the palm trees should have been obliterated by the shockwave, let alone anybody who was taking that picture.
And it's still developed. It's still developed. It's just a skeleton.
Just took it to Snappy Snaps.
Yeah.
Skeleton just walked into Snappy Snaps.
Isn't it weird how they call them?
Will that be ready?
They call them mushroom clouds and the Mad Hatter Project.
Hallucinogens, you think?
I'm thinking hallucinogens. Yeah, I am. Especially with what was to come, all the way through the Cold War, more or less.
We're basically saying you've got to be mad or off your tits to believe it.
Yes, or both.
Or both, yeah. Now the next slide, please.
Look at
this is an interesting one as well. Yeah, exactly. Now, so much wrong with this one, right? Okay, first of all, these guys have got no protective clothing or eyewear. They would have been hit with a huge dose of gamma rays that would have blinded them.
I think those khaki trousers would protect them, John.
Yeah. And gamma rays travel at the speed of light because they're part of the electromagnetic spectrum, so that they would have been absolutely instantly blasted with a huge lethal dose of gamma rays.
Before the smoke even got that high, they'd have been disintegrated.
Absolutely.
If it was the speed of light.
And bear in mind as well that gamma rays destroy photo and video instantly.
So some NASA parallels yet again.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what destroyed all the plans.
Right.
that
He had him in his
would
back.
be it,
That guy in the middle had him in his back pocket.
Had him in his ass pocket there. Other ass pocket had a packet of fags, and that had he lit his fag with one of the pages of the plans. Yeah.
That'd be it. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please, guys. Another interesting photograph, not of a nuclear explosion this time. But what a giveaway. This is the US military studying their script for the fake tests at Eniwetok Atoll in 1951. The tests were actually scripted. And there you have the second draft of the script right in before your eyes. Real events do not require scripts.
Yeah.
This photograph I took from a US government website, Lookout Mountain, in fact, and it follows the maxim of hiding in plain sight or revelation of the method. It's there, right there, just to show you that it's a complete load of utter bollocks.
And what you've got is 4 army blokes here with a document on it. It's a second draft script for Operation Greenhouse. Interesting name again. Yeah. And public motion picture. Can't read that other word. Public release motion picture, second draft script for Operation Greenhouse.
Yeah. Operation
Learn
Greenhouse
your lines.
was the
Learn your lines.
Yeah, Operation Greenhouse was the tests at Eniwetok Atoll in 1951. Next slide. Okay. This is just me selling my book here, but there's so much more evidence of photo fakery, all in the Falsification of Science by that genius called John Hamer. But it's too much in there to cover in such a short presentation as this. Now, a little bit more interest coming up now. Next slide, please. This was a poster, the movie poster for the China Syndrome. Some of you out there probably saw this film. It's been on TV, and not very often, but it has been on TV.
I've never seen that, John.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard of it?
I'm not sure. I think so. I'm not sure.
The title of the film refers to the fact that it was said that a nuclear explosion could cause a rift in the earth, reaching right through to China.
Right.
Yeah, which is
yes, I've heard this.
I thought it was.
Is that Jack Lemmon in that?
Yeah,
Jack Lemmon and Michael Douglas.
I thought it was a link to Dresden dropping teapots on us again.
And Jane Fonda, isn't it?
That Jane Fonda,
China teapots.
So you've got three quite big actors to be in this, then, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the interesting thing about this is this film was released on the 16th of March, 1979. And believe it or not, I've checked this out, it was the first ever intimation that nuclear power plants could undergo a devastating meltdown.
Oh, there you go.
Now, like I said, the title of the film refers to the fact that an explosion.
So they're pulling a new card out now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Meltdown card.
Yeah. So nice bit of propaganda there. So just bear that in mind for a minute. We'll go on to the next slide. For those of you who don't recognise that is a nuclear power station. It's called 3 Mile Island in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And some of you, if you're as old as me or a bit younger, you might be able to remember that incident. It received saturation news coverage for weeks. And this is the point where I say to the live audience, does anyone know when it was? And nobody does, of course. Was it in 1987? No. Strangely enough, it was the 28th of March, 1979, 16 days after the China Syndrome was released. Sorry, 12 days after China Syndrome was released.
I'm getting deja vu syndrome.
Yeah. Coincidence?
That's bloody close as well, isn't
it? Yeah. So they bring out a film that posits this idea of a nuclear explosion, nuclear power plant meltdown, and then, bugger me, 12 days later, it really happens. Also, they said. Yeah.
What happened in that meltdown, John? Did people die? Was it a massive drama, or was it?
I can't remember. I don't know. If
I'm not aware of that one.
I don't think anybody died. Actually, no. I think it was just a scare thing. Yeah. It was just like, oh god, we've had a meltdown.
Just introduce the word meltdown to the lexicon.
Absolutely. So next slide, please. Okay, this next slide is titled "Radiation is not deadly." Ooh, a bit of controversy there. Right, they have to say it is in order to make the danger seem even greater. No one in Hiroshima and Nagasaki suffered radiation burns or from radiation sickness. And it begs the question, why were those two cities never abandoned afterwards? Look at Chernobyl. What happened at Chernobyl? Oh, everybody was carted off straight away. And Fukushima as well. That wasn't abandoned either. So, make your minds up, guys. Which one is it? Do we abandon cities that have nuclear meltdowns, or do we not? I don't know. So, yeah. And the next slide, please, is another picture. And that is a picture of Hiroshima, the day after the alleged nuclear attacks. Are those people wearing any kind of protective clothing?
You've got long trousers on.
Got long trousers on. Yeah. So they just stood amongst for those who can't see the picture, they just stood amongst the rubble of Hiroshima with absolutely no protective clothing whatsoever. They just stood there, and they look fairly official. They're looking at plans and drawings or something.
They have to rebuild it.
Yeah.
It probably says Black Rock, 1945.
Yeah. So, yeah. Next slide, please. We are getting towards the end now. It's just a picture of Fukushima. And it says underneath, the nuclear disaster at Fukushima sent an unprecedented amount of radiation to the Pacific. But before then, atomic bomb tests and radioactive waste were contaminating the sea. Okay, it's another city that was never abandoned, like I said, despite the so-called devastating reactor meltdown. This was all this radiation was, I remember it well because, funnily enough, shortly after Fukushima, I was in California, and this radiation was allegedly headed across the Pacific to California. I spent 2 weeks in Hollywood in 2013, 2 years after Fukushima, when the radiation was allegedly just reaching the US mainland. Right.
So it's just slowly drifted over.
Yeah, well, some people may have heard this story from me before, but I was actually invited over to Hollywood to try to raise money to make a film about my version of the Titanic story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've not told you.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this Hollywood film director. Not she's only a minor director. I'd never heard of her, but she did. She directed Hollywood films, and she invited me over, and the idea was to go around all these producers that she knew and try and raise some funds. Well, it never happened. I mean, nobody was interested because of the content of the, story. But I spent, 2 weeks over there, and but she was terrified of this radiation, and she wouldn't go out. She would only go out absolutely with lots of clothes on, get straight from the car straight from the house into the car, and then stay in the car. She was terrified of this radiation. She wouldn't have any windows open or anything. And I just remember thinking, and she had this Geiger counter. She bought this Geiger counter, and she kept looking at it and going, "I'm going to send this back. It's not working. It's not showing anything at all."
Not there isn't any radiation. It's just the Geiger counter. It's not working.
No, it's not working. It's faulty. I'm going to send it back and get a refund. Yeah, so that was funny. So yeah, that was obviously,
and that actually reminds you of the nonsense we lived through in 2020, doesn't it? Where I could tell a story. The other week I went to Manchester, John, and just before Christmas, a Chinese guy. I'm saying he's Chinese, an Oriental-looking chap, and his wife got out of a new Porsche. He had 2 masks on, and
they all look same fine.
Washing it, it's only like us big nostril freaks all look same. I said that to somebody the other day. He said, "What are you?" I said, "Well, we all look same, don't we?" Anyway, but he washed his hands about 10 times, and his wife had a mask on, and me and my missus got in the lift out the car park to go up, and he got in and pressed the button with his fingernail, right, and then stood in corner facing the wall with 2 masks on. This was Christmas. This was Christmas. So I mean, that's not right dissimilar. Yeah. It's not a right lot dissimilar from that lady there going back 10 years ago.
No, exactly. Yeah.
This is the thing that's always got me, John, with the nuclear story. Even before I actually thought it was nonsense, the radiation story never makes any sense because, according to films and the TV and whatever, if somewhere's been bombed, you got thousands of years before you can go back to it. Yeah, but yet they've set off 2,000 nuclear bombs around the Earth, stroke
Yeah.
planet, or whatever you want to
But
call it.
none of
Allegedly.
these great
Allegedly.
scientists.
Allegedly.
Brian Cox says, "Well, how come we can go on Bikini Atoll now and there's
Yeah.
crabs and fish and that swimming around it?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if they set according to their own version of what a nuclear bomb does, if they set 2,000 off around the world, we wouldn't be able to go anywhere. Everything would be fucked, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, look at Chernobyl. I mean, it's absolutely a haven for wildlife now, and people are moving back in.
Yeah.
It's almost like when you think of Chernobyl, then you think of the other one in the 70s and Fukushima. It's like they do them every so often just to keep the nuclear
just to keep
mythos alive.
In the forefront of your mind, isn't it? Right? Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. This is a picture of a guy by the name of Galen Windsor. Some of you may have heard of him, but I'll tell you who he is in a moment. Next slide, please. Now, Galen Windsor worked all his life in nuclear power plants in the States, and he absolutely insisted that radiation was safe. He stated categorically that the 3 Mile Island disaster was a hoax. Don't forget, this is a nuclear power guy. He swam, this is true, by the way, I've seen pictures of him doing it. He swam in the allegedly highly toxic reactor cooling ponds every day, every single day of his life. And he used to go around doing lectures about what nonsense it was that that radiation was dangerous. And he used to lick pure uranium off his hands as part of his lectures.
I've seen one of those, John. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Back in the glory days of YouTube, I've seen them. Videos of him doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So next slide, please. We'll just go on to the summary now. Major Derski told us that there was no difference in any of the bombing methodology, in either the bombing methodologies used or in the actual results of extensive carpet bombing. No difference between the 2 atomic cities and the rest of the bombed out cities in Europe and Japan. The metal frame buildings were still intact. The brick built buildings were still intact. And he also debunked the 200,000 dead figure. He reckoned between 50 and 60,000. So that obviously,
is he a revisionist then?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what happened to him.
Is he a revisionist, John? Is he a revisionist because he's questioning how many people died?
No, sorry, I'm a bit slow on the upset there.
Yeah.
It's funny you should mention that, though, because I've tried to find anything about the guy.
Yeah.
Since the 1940s, and I can't find anything at all. But there you go. Maybe I didn't look very far.
Like he's been memory hold.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So next slide, please. So we know that the photographic evidence of all the nuclear tests faked. In August 1945, Japan surrendered. The world was about to live in terror or the threat of nuclear war for the next 45 years during the Cold War. There are no official records in Japan or anywhere else of anyone ever dying from nuclear weapons attacks or radiation. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed by conventional weapons. Of that, I have absolutely no doubt. But of course, military propaganda and censorship of the truth did the rest of the job. I did this the very first time I gave this presentation. Actually, it was in Nottingham. Not that it matters where it was, but it was just a point of interest. And this lady stood up at the end when I asked for questions, and she said, "Well." She said, it's very strange, this. She said, because I lived in Hiroshima for 10 years, she says, and I can tell you that, this is just absolute nonsense. We know that there was an atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. She said, and one of the things, she said, there's a wall in Hiroshima where you can see the shadows of people that were obliterated, and their shadow was imprinted on the wall. And somebody else in the audience stood up and said, how come the wall was still standing? And she sat down again, and then she shut up, and then she came up to me afterwards. She said, "You might be right."
It's funny how they put those little nuggets though. Because
I'm glad I went in that woman's head, aren't you, Chris? I'm glad it wasn't me. That all that time she thought that them people were imprinted on that, and that one comment by that chap. Why were the walls still there?
But that's the story, isn't it? That's the story. They need that. I watched the video today, unrelated, but a similar thing, and it was on about the theory of evolution. And it would show this guy interviewing people, do you believe in everything? And every one of them said, yeah, but them birds, so they'd all got this little nugget from, the apparent evolution thing that these birds change beak shape.
I think
but that's not going from one fucking species to another, is it? That's just the beak shape.
That's microevolution.
Microevolution. We're all capable of that.
I have no problem with that.
I can have microevolution at home on my own.
You did. We had nostrils.
you did with your bald head.
I tell you what,
we're getting sweater.
It's a good job I'm not making these racist comments, otherwise I'd be vilified, mate.
Yeah, you told me to say them.
Cancelled, John.
You coerced me into saying them, John.
Yeah, white man's guilt.
Yeah, you're a colour coercer.
Yeah. Oh dear.
But what do you think nuclear? What is it? Energy stations are. Do you think it's free energy? Just fake?
I honestly don't know, mate.
Is it the same thing, or is it? Just...
It might be real. I mean, nuclear power might be real. I just don't think it's dangerous. I just think that it's just part of
not the version,
the weapons hoax.
I almost suspect sometimes that the old nuclear thing could be just free energy, because they could set that whole thing. Everyone could be going there, pressing buttons, turning spanners, and it's just that's how it's just free. It's just who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But like John says, nuclear energy could exist, and now they're vilifying it because they don't. Because obviously now they're scared everybody it's going to leak and blow up, and
it might be cheap or free though.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
So the one thing we can benefit from that shuts the global climate warming bollocks nonsense tools off, when they don't want to use it anymore.
Yeah, could stop us using dinosaur fuel.
Windmills.
Okay, guys, next slide, please. This is a little saying that I kind of coined because I thought it was quite amusing. Scientists have discovered that people will believe absolutely anything as long as it's preceded by the words, scientists have discovered that.
Top leading scientists sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Top leading scientist with a blue leather jacket and a graph.
Yeah. Brian Cox has discovered that.
Yeah.
People will believe anything as long as it's preceded by the words, Brian Cox has discovered that.
Yeah. Not even that, John, just has to be on TV, I think, to be honest.
If you're listening, Brian, I'm only kidding, mate.
I'm fucking
great.
I'm fucking not.
Next slide.
There you go.
Right, this is a quote from my book, Falsification of Science, which for the uninitiated, you will find all this information and much, much, much more besides. And it goes like this. To repeat, for the avoidance of any doubt at all, two small metal pieces cannot become one by compressing them together. It is a scientific and physical impossibility, and another example of the indiscriminate breaking of the laws of physics. And even if they could, they would not detonate destructively. Solid metal cannot simply explode under any circumstances any more than nothing can, as in the case of the alleged Big Bang. Nuclear fission is only possible under moderated and controlled conditions by using neutrons to produce energy in the form of electricity and heat.
Yeah.
Next slide.
You can see why there was so much secrecy attached to this, can't you? Because it wasn't because they had something to blow somebody up. It was because there was nothing. It was again the Mad Hatter conjuring trick.
Again, like NASA. Yeah.
Some pertinent questions on the next slide.
Yep.
Nuclear bombs allegedly incinerate everything within a radius of tens of miles. So why were all the non-wooden buildings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki still standing with little structural damage afterwards? Why has Chernobyl remained a haven for wildlife if radiation is so deadly? And why did 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania remain open if it was supposedly leaking copious amounts of radioactive material for a long period and causing cancer en masse in the adjacent populations? We're also told that nuclear power plants, such as the one at San Onofre in Southern California, leaks, but beachgoers have been using the beaches right beside it for many years, and no one is known to have suffered any ill effects. Indian Point in upstate New York is alleged to be leaking radioactive material into the drinking water of New York City. Why has no one reportedly died from this?
Because
all rhetorical questions.
Bird flu's more of a killer.
Yeah. Next slide. It is near the end now. Right. It's an absolute, this is the conclusion. It's an absolute unquestionable concrete fact that the USSR and the USA colluded and worked together to fake both the alleged space race and the Cold War. Next slide.
I said that at the beginning.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Why did
You
we
could have
bother?
saved us an hour.
That was a
You
joke
saved us
myself,
a bloody
that
hour,
was
mate.
That was a joke.
It wouldn't have been able to drink his bottle of wine, John.
Yeah, all right. Next slide. Another conclusion. Nuclear weapons do not exist. They're a simple but effective way of controlling populations and keeping the masses in a constant state of fear and apprehension, thereby rendering us all much easier to control. Next slide. And of course, the arms race is another huge money-generating machine, just like NASA and all its fake space nonsense. The billions generated by these hoaxes are no doubt being funneled into all manner of black ops, as well as the deep pockets of the perpetrators. It's all about fear, 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 and more fear. This is the control mechanism that they use to keep us in a permanent state of unease, thereby easier to control.
Yeah, I mean, think about Ukraine, right? Apparently, America's given something like $170 billion, and he says he can only find 77 billion. And if you think about right, and that's only in Paris that is spent buying a Bentayga, but if you think about that, that's a minute version of what NASA spent and what the nuclear program spent and everything else. You know, that's just one little thing that's gone over 2 or 3 years. That 100 billion's missing.
Absolutely.
No, it's like an obvious version of it, isn't it? It's like a more obvious, blatant version of.
And now they just turned it off. Right, war's over. War's over. I'm having a meeting with Putin.
The only war that's ever existed that's got no footage.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the last 100 years, anyway.
Yeah. When there's more, everyone's got a mobile phone.
Yeah.
There's no genuine footage.
Next slide, guys. We're right at the end now. It's a cartoon split into two on the screen, and it says, "What can we do?" It's a little guy sat in an armchair watching telly, and the guy on the telly says, "What can we do to stop living in fear?" And the guy in the chair just gets his remote and goes, "Click." Switches him off, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, never a true word been said.
Yeah, the rest of the presentation is just me and my books. The end. Any questions or comments? And as it's not live, we don't
need any questions and comments because Chris told everybody what was going to happen an hour ago.
No, fantastic though, John.
They were brilliant. That.
Good.
We finally got through it. And
the Major Alex D. Savetsky bit, and I've never heard that before.
Right.
That's very interesting. Because also
he's quite good, John.
Chris, I was going to say, did you think did they introduce the radiation thing after he? You know what I mean? Was it like a story that got introduced in the 50s or something? Because they do that kind of thing exists, doesn't it?
Oh, I know which event you're particularly referring to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
We'll never know, I suppose, will we? Because unless you were there at the time.
Well, I was there at the time in the 50s. I'm sad to say.
No. I mean, Hiroshima kind of thing.
Oh,
was it like years later that they started talking about radiation? Because otherwise, he would not have gone there, and those guys wouldn't be stood there with a map. So it almost seems like it was possibly interjected in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you think about it, though, Chris, all of these, like the books the comics you used to read, all the bad guys always got dropped in a vat of nuclear waste.
The 60s were nuclear. Yeah. That was a nuclear probably the 60s, I would imagine. Then that they started talking about the
maybe
the nuclear thing.
Maybe
we'll never know, will we? I always say, John, in like if you look at war films, like if you think of The Great Escape, and it's got the Germans in it, obviously, and they're in a concentration camp.
Yeah, prisoner of war camp.
Sorry, prisoner of war camp. There's a difference. They were kind of friendly and jovial, weren't they? They were like, there was like a gentleman's understanding that you were this and you that. But if you look at a war film now about the Second World War, they're like rapists, pillaging, just insane lunatics, But just after when they made The Great Escape and other Second World War films, we got a different version of how it was. And what I'm trying to get at is, the version of the radiation could have been changed in 20, 30 years ago, couldn't it? Easily. In the 60s.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like Dom says, that's when all the superhero comics started using radiation to turn the Hulk green and Spider-Man and blah, blah, blah. So they were obviously really selling and pushing the radiation story in the 60s, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as we've covered with some of these people that wrote the comics and in the films and stuff like that, they were all the same people. I mean, Lookout Mountain, obviously at Laurel Canyon and things like that. They're all the same people pushing the propaganda, utilising the same things. Who were it? Who was that guy I found out yesterday, Chris? He was an actor. And he was a cousin of bloody hell. We have to find his name now. Anyway, he was in an intelligence group with Lord Mountbatten, an American guy. And
I can't remember
Fairbanks Jr.
Yeah,
and his father was a cousin of the Nirvana guy's ex-wife. What's she called now? Blonde-haired girl. Anyway,
mine's gone blank.
Yeah, so the reason I'm saying that is all these things are all behind the scenes. So he becomes a famous actor, and he was in a secret detachment in the military, setting up propaganda. And then he becomes a famous actor, and that's how it works, isn't it? Douglas Fairbanks Jr. That's it.
Yeah, I mean that's the topic of the I forgot his name, Dave, somebody of all the Laurel Canyon stuff.
Dave McGowan.
Dave McGowan, that's him. Yeah. It's it's all the military connections are there, aren't they?
Yes,
and it's still going on to this day as well.
Yeah.
That was brilliant, that though, John. A breakdown
Thanks,
into
man,
the nuclear nonsense.
That's that picture you made, Chris.
Very concise. What is?
That.
All right. I want to put all his books on one page.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
You just need to add his new one.
I've done it, actually. I've done it.
I've left the space there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you
on that topic, it's out now, the new book. I just wondered if you'd have me and my co-author on at some stage. Just
no. You can talk about it. Anytime you want, pal. Anytime you want. Yeah.
Is that your is that the new? Where did I was looking at it over there, John? Is the new fiction Antarctica?
Oh, 60 degrees south, it's called. Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, we'll have to organise that. Who co-authored it with you?
Guy called Andy Ross. He just contacted me out of the blue about this time last year and just said, I've got this idea for a book. Would you be interested in helping me write it? Because I've never done anything like that before. And so I set up a meeting, went to see him, and I thought, wow, this is great. So, yeah,
John, I've got this idea for a book.
Yeah?
In fact, 20 books.
Yeah,
I have really.
How do you go about co-authoring it then? Did he come up with the thick? Because I always wondered about co-authoring.
I always wondered about that as well.
It was different to the way that me and Shannon did it. With Welcome to the Masquerade, with the way we did it, we were both knowledgeable on certain topics.
You don't mind talking about this, do you? On the you don't mind talking about this part? People will be interested in this bit.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking, Dom.
Yeah.
It was different to when me and Shannon Rowan did a joint thing, because we had knowledge of different topics. So I did certain aspects of that book and she did other aspects, but this was a real joint thing. We used to spend hours on the phone discussing the plot lines, coming up with ideas. He had the basic general idea at first, and then we kind of refined it as we went along, and we just basically wrote bits each, so all right, this chapter is going to be about such and such. Do you want to do that, or shall I do it? It was just one like that, and we just split it 50-50.
Because I thought he asked you, because you do like more history and stuff. He had a fictional idea, and he wanted like factual input. Yeah, that's right.
It probably is that, Chris. Really,
there is an element to that, because there's some factual stuff in the book. And I, that's what I'm responsible for, all that,
All right, so I was right. You're kind of right.
Yeah, but I've done some
beans again early, Chris.
I've done some of the fictional aspects as well,
I can write fiction as well, Chris. That sounds good, though, John.
Good. No, it's a great story. I mean, even though I say it myself, and it's been well received from those who've already read it. So it's, friends and family and such.
Is it out now then?
It's out now. Yeah, it was published at the very end of January, and then it was revised slightly a couple of weeks ago.
I think you should do, John, a new little montage there, Chris.
Well, I could slot him in there.
I've done
can I?
one. No, I've done one actually. I've done
Have
it
you done it?
myself.
Right.
I've added a bit in.
It's a nice
Right.
background, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. That yeah.
What's the book called again, John? I don't know if
It's called 60 Degrees South, and it's
Right.
basically. I'll outline the story. It's about a guy, RAF guy, who's seconded to the UN at a place called King George Island, which is 62 degrees south, which is like about 500 miles south of Tierra del Fuego, on the tip of South America. And he's been seconded to the UN Antarctic Interceptor Force, because for those who are not aware, you're not allowed to go beyond 60 degrees unless you're in some kind of a guided tour or a controlled party. If you try and go beyond that parallel under your own steam, either by boat or by plane, you get turned back. And if you don't turn back, they shoot you down or blow you out of the water. It has happened. You're not allowed to go. So it's just a kind of a speculative, fictional story interspersed with fact about what is it that they're protecting, what's going on beyond the ice wall, basically.
Right. I'd love to know. That's one of the biggest things I'd love to know.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you what your conclusion is, or maybe I'll just say it.
I'm going to. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you're going to join us in part 2, we'll see you there. Bye.
But
I'll be a part of the oceans and skies. When I was young,